welcome back to Uncharted X. This is Ben, and this video is another video swapcast with my good friends Kyle and Russ, the venerable brothers of the Serpent. In this episode, we're taking a deep dive look at all of my footage of a few places in Peru. We're starting with Ollantaytambo, which is really probably my favorite overall site in Peru. It's just a remarkable little spot. It's skipped by a lot of people as it's the gateway to Machu Picchu. It's where you board the train when you go there. But it really has some incredible secrets if you go looking closely at it. I think this site is the best example of a site with the three disparate and different styles of architecture that you see in South America all mixed together. You have the Pacha, which is the older monolithic style that's really carved out of living rock, almost as if the rock looked like it was flowing. It typically looks incredibly ancient. You have the Pacha, which is the typical megalithic style, the cellular architecture of all of the polygonal blocks, the stuff that Peru is really famous for. And then you have Pacha, which is what I would characterize as the Inca work, these small stones, local stones, typically done maybe with some mud mortar. You have all of these three styles really mixed together at Ollantaytambo. We're also getting into the Coricancha, which is the megalithic structure at the center of Cusco. We kind of mentioned that in the previous episodes about Sacsayhuaman. I think it was all connected together. But the Coricancha is somewhat unique in its particular style of megalithic architecture. You see a lot of the Pacha here, which is the cellular work, but it's very, very fine work. You also see represented some of the shapes that you see the Inca later on tried to replicate. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at a place that's not often visited. It's another site around Cusco called the Temple of the Moon. And this is a very much Pacha structure. This is one of the oldest sites, I think. It looks incredibly ancient, and it is mostly made up of that older style of monolithic work that's carved into the mountainside itself. It's just an intriguing site. So in any case, I'll let us get on with it in the podcast. I hope you enjoy, and I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.
Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are once again joined by Ben from Uncharted X. This is the fourth. Is this the fourth one of his swapcasts?
I think it is.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's the fourth one, and this time we're staying in Peru, and we're going to look at Ollantaytambo and the Coricancha.
Yep.
And one other site. Which site was it?
The Temple of the Moon. It's one of the sites up around Cusco. It's not something that typically gets a lot of exposure as far as I can tell. It's a really interesting site. Little interesting contrast to some of the other styles that you typically see. But yeah, good fun. We'll see how we go for time. But yeah, I've got all of those lined up. Should be interesting.
All right. Fantastic. Yeah, I have to say, the Egypt stuff is always fascinating, but there's something about, and I think we talked about this last time with Matt, there's something about the Peruvian ruins, especially the more megalithic stuff, and then of course the stuff that to us looks very old that's carved out of the living rock. That's haunting. It's just it's so enigmatic. Both in style, and trying to comprehend how they accomplished it, as well as in a lot of cases, what the hell is it for? When you're looking at these strange shapes carved out of the stone, and you're just like, what were they doing? Like, what was even the purpose of this? So,
I feel you.
It's a mystery all the way.
I don't get it. I mean, there's definitely this level of enigma that seems to come with the South American stuff that's at a high level. You can really see the civilization touch. I think you relate a little bit more to some of the stuff in Egypt almost, and then it's just as you say, the Peruvian and South American, a lot of it's just, it's hard to imagine what they were thinking when it first happened. Like, there's so many examples of that, and particularly the Pacha stuff, which is the oldest sort of monolithic style. It's all these shapes that are carved out of mountains.
Yeah.
And they're not all, I mean, some of them may have been quarried, but I mean, a lot of it isn't quarried. Like, there's deliberate shapes and deliberate things going on that, you wouldn't have done if you were just quarrying there. And we'll see a ton of examples of it, but it's a little frustrating because most of the time you end up in South America, it's like you just don't know. Like, I think there's just so much more mystery because there's, to me, there's a bigger gap. Like, there's just, you don't have like, we have kind of the dynastic Egyptian connection, if you like, that they flew on. I feel like they flowed on from that precursor culture, and there's something there. But in South America, it seems like there's a much bigger gap between the megalithic builders and then the later cultures. And even though they respected and revered all of the work, it's hard to sort of comprehend its purpose or what it was for, or even how it was done. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
frustrating. You end up with like, I don't know, all the time.
Exactly, and it's again with the three styles, it's strange because when we look at the middle style, the second one, it's beautiful, and yet still you're like, how did they do that? You know, that's the first question. Is like, how did they even do that? And then you can tell that they're sort of, like you've pointed out many times, that they're sort of enclosing this older style that's you know, it's like you say, monolithic, or even just rock cut out of stone that's in the mountain.
Yeah.
And I wonder if those people, the second style builders, even knew what the first style was for. You know.
Yeah. I wondered the same thing.
Yeah, in the same way that you see the Inca come along and then they build on top of all of it, and did they know what the second people were doing? You know, and that's the other thing, is that in Egypt the most enigmatic structures clearly are the ones that have no writing on them.
Right.
You know, they're completely bare, and they're beautiful, monolithic, you know, megalithic style, and you just look at it and you kind of have this mystery because it's completely unmarked, or they found a statue or a piece of a head somewhere nearby, and they're like, all right, that guy built it. But, you know, we don't really know because there's no writing on the stone. And it's the same way with these. We see these animal figures. There's snakes. There's what looks like maybe a puma or a cat, or maybe a lizard in some cases. But there's it's just, there's three styles of building, and I'm wondering if any of the people that did any of the building knew anything about the other people that did the building. That's the question. Right. Is like, how long between these styles was there?
Yeah, right. And I think one of the things you can see, particularly with the older style, is that and it's just, look, I'm not a geologist, and it's always hard to tell these things from the eye, but it looks so ancient, like particularly the old style, and we'll see that at the Temple of the Moon, which is primarily that Hunan Pacha old, I call it the older style, but it's that monolithic living rock. It's which mostly shapes carved from an existing rock outcropping, not so much walls made from cellular stones. And it just looks so old. And I agree. Like, who knows? There's definitely some sort of reverent. They recognized that they were looking at something that either was special, or it had some meaning, or they just found it profound because they understood how difficult this work was. That's when you end up with this protection and this inheritance, I think, and this sense of reverence. And we find this. And I love the best example is really how when you go to these sites, how you feel about it when you're interested, not just a tourist passing by like for no reason, but if you're actually interested in the topic and you go to these sites, you find it profound and interesting. I think the same thing has happened in the past. So whether they have any deeper connection to the prior builders, I don't know either. It doesn't feel like it. Almost, it's like, well, we're going to preserve this. We're going to make this our sacred site. We're going to add our touches to it. Use it for our purposes. And that happened a couple different times. That's what it seems like. It's like it wasn't just the Inca, and then at least once or twice before that. It seems to be what's happened. And even today, there's still, we're adding our touches to it. We're like, let me I'll flip over to here so we can, you guys can see that.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is, and I'll roll the video in a second, but this is Ollanta Tambo, and we're adding our touches to it. Like, we make it a tourist site. It's not like an elites only, ceremonial site. Although certainly in our civilization, some of these sites like the Sphinx and the pyramids have been used as such, but these days they're tourist sites, and we add our touches to them. It's sort of, we're just following on, I think, to the same thing that's happened in the past. But yeah, I hate ending up at that same place all the time, which is, I just don't know. It's a lot of it is hard to explain.
Well, I think that's actually important, is to start from that, like to acknowledge, we don't know.
Right.
And then you can start asking the interesting questions, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, sure, we found potsherds and we found datable material that relate to different cultures and styles, but that doesn't mean that they're responsible for the stonework. It means that the place has been occupied and used. And, in 1,000 years, when you find this sign here, the Parque Arqueológico Nacional Ollanta Tambo, that maybe that's, that'll be evidence that says, oh, it was these people that made it. It's the same. I think it's hard to. There's a relationship thing that happens with how the story gets dated into history, and of course, this is one of those sites that they more or less attribute to the Inca. There's the Quilca culture, a couple other cultures as well, the precursors. But most of the work, they will tell you, was done by the Inca, being the largest known civilization in that time, in that era. And It's really weird with the dating too, because it's, you know, 50. Only the Inca civilization was 150 years old from start to finish, more or less. And they're certainly not the oldest. I mean, there's acknowledged. Peru's this real mystery. You know, you've got the Corral and 5,000-year-old sites like that, where there's pyramids up in the desert. You've got a site that we should look at is Corral, but another one is Chavan Temple, which is thousands of years old. So all of these precursor cultures that also did some pretty impressive work, but it's not the Sacred Valley. So the Sacred Valley typically gets attributed to the Inca.
Subscribing in the workout stream?
What about the...
what?
I'm not going to get this wrong.
What a
towers?
revolutionary.
Chulpa Towers? Yeah, that's another place.
Yo,
Chulpa,
thanks, man.
That's Sulistani, I think the name is.
Are you serious, buddy?
Yeah, it's we'll look at that one as well at
6
some point. That's around Lake
months?
Titicaca. That's straight
Wow.
up same megalithic work.
Yeah.
Different form and the
Dude,
towers.
that's
but the
really
blocks
amazing,
and there's
dude.
actually
Thank you
some
so much,
gigantic,
man.
People know the towers, but at that site there's also that's a place that also looks immeasurably old. It looks like it's been
Oh.
horrendously
Thanks, man. I
damaged.
need a wall of
Like,
subs,
there's
buddy.
remnants of walls. With
Where does
these
the time go? I
giant
know,
blocks in them.
man.
Like,
I know.
Some
Number
of the biggest
80, man.
single-piece cellular blocks that you'll see
Number
anywhere
80,
in Peru
dude.
are at that site. Like 10 feet tall.
I
And
know,
like,
man.
like
Where does
almost
the time go?
like
6
Sacsayhuaman
months, man. Thank you so
style.
much. Here we go.
Wow.
I'm gonna do
Size.
2 reps.
There's a bunch
I'm
of
doing
blocks
2 reps
on
now
walls, and
today.
it's just been jumbled
That's
up.
my
and that whole
last time I
site's
did 1.
just
Now I'm trying to do 2.
a
My
mess
first set I did
of,
2. Here we go. I'm gonna do 2 again.
of blocks and things.
Predict, man.
And
I need a
think
wall
a
of
lot
subs.
those towers have been
You know what
put
I
back
need?
together,
I need
and
I
some
need
of them have been repaired. Not just by
I
us,
could literally
but
just
also
make a
before us, but
transparent
in
thing of
general, like that
subs
place
on
looks
here,
really
right
old,
here,
really
like
weathered.
subs, boom,
And
boom,
that's a
boom.
good one to look
That would
at
probably be best
in the
right
future.
here.
But yeah,
I'm gonna do it later though, because I
we can
don't.
talk about this as we go too.
I don't
but,
want to
Alante
stop my
Tambo, so
workout. You know what I mean? To like
I'll
do
let
like.
this roll, but just so
drawing editing or whatever.
rough geographical description of it. I mean, this is
Oh,
one of the
thanks,
sites
man.
in the Sacred Valley. This is where you catch the train. Most people come here to catch the train to go to Machu Picchu, but the site's worth looking at. And it's built into a very steep hill, which we'll see here. It's in a valley. There's mountains all around it. Part of the site runs up the side of one of these mountains and around it. In fact, it spreads out on a couple different sites. And there's a town at the bottom, in between these mountains, if you like, and that's always been a town, and it's still a town today, called Alante Tambo. It has hotels. You can stay there. It's like kind of like a mini Cusco. It's a nice little spot. So let me do this, and I'll mute this audio too, because it's just wind noise mostly.
That's you,
We'll get
man.
some
You
audio out
inspired
of it
me to
later.
do that, buddy.
Yeah, look at those mountains. Wow, and the terracing.
Yeah, right. So the Sacred Valley's super terraced, and we'll get a closer look at that on that far mountain. I don't know if you can see it, but there is
Dick specialty.
also
the
work
50s.
over there.
Yeah.
They call those the granaries. We can talk about it a bit later on.
Okay.
But
Yo,
you
speedy
see
chair.
One thing that
Hold the
I
body
like
weight
to
squat
mention is
position,
a
air
lot of
squat
this
90
work is
degrees,
Inca.
3 minutes.
A lot of it is terracing that the Inca did. Like that's one thing that they definitely
Hold the body
indelibly
weight
left their
squat
mark
position.
on the hillsides through the
Air
Sacred
squat
Valley.
90
They're
is right.
incredible. They sculpted the
A
mountain
sub
sides,
and
they
an
made
additional sub every
gardens
15
out of them
seconds
for terracing
after.
work, and it's all done with these little stones. And there's a real significant difference between it and
3
the
minutes,
megalithic
that's
work.
crazy,
And this is
dude.
that's a good example. You have the bottom layer here is megalithic, and then
I
the
I know what you mean. The
built a lot
air,
of those
the
walls in
air sit.
between. So that some of these
pretty cool. That's a good
terracing
idea.
layers may not
Alright, here
have
we go.
fully existed like this originally. And again, obviously
Welcome,
heavily
Speedy
damaged. There is just rock and cut rock everywhere. Like, real weird. Just buried in the stone, and then notice on this one you've got sort of cut faces plus these big scoop marks on the block.
Yep.
See those scoop marks? It's kind of nutty. Almost
Yeah,
as if
there's
something.
what looks like a random boulder, but it's been cut in half, or like it's
Cowboy
there's
squat.
a sheer
Nice.
face on one side of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was probably my hand pointing out scoop marks as we were walking past it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, so where we're walking here is this kind of follows along the bottom level, like the ground level, if you like, at the bottom of where the terracing starts, and looks at. There's some really good examples of where you see a lot of megalithic blocks, and then a lot of other styles. So you see it everywhere here. This is a great site for looking at the 3 different styles of stonework. So as we go through this,
I'll think about it, man. I'll
where
think
you
about
see
it.
obvious megalithic work, how it's been repaired with later Inca work, and then also where you'll see this in a lot of places, the Hanan Pacha, the monolithic work, the original work, which I would classify this as. Like
I will definitely think
this
about
is
it, and
a
I'll try it
working
out
water
at
feature.
some point.
The water's not flowing a
But
lot
not right
right
now.
now, but
Thank
this
you,
is
though.
one
Thanks
of
for
those
being here.
incredible shapes that's sort of been
Yeah.
wrought into stone. Man, you get
multiple inside corners.
Yeah.
And it's just an aesthetic design. right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Seems to be.
Lots of work on there, and then you can tell that the outside has been either is damaged in some places, and maybe somebody tried to fix some areas. Yeah, very interesting.
And the nice thing about it, we'll go through the footage and then we'll look at photos after, because the photos will give us a cleaner look at some of these individual objects, but the video kind of gives you a bit of context for where it all is. Yeah, you get told some stories about that's a very famous fountain. About how the water doesn't, like, it come when it's flowing properly, it spurts out, doesn't touch it. There's some strange things. There's some real nice lentil blocks that are obviously been recycled from megalithic sites and then built as part of probably the original Inca settlement. You can see the modern town, still mud brick and adobe in the background. It's just a beautiful place.
Nice.
The Sacred Valley in Peru just is spectacular under any circumstances.
Yeah, basically walls of mountains on either side.
Yeah.
Yo, thanks for subbing, dude.
mountains.
I've been getting some deep fucking sleep thanks to these Valerian root. Well, that's crazy, buddy. Tell me all about it.
Are mud brick.
Drooling on my pillow.
Well, yeah.
Ancient
Wow.
giant blocks.
Right.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah, it reminds me of that story about
That doesn't sound very
Egypt with
very natural.
The Egypt
I mean, it
Rising
is
statue
natural,
made
but
in the 50s that made from granite. They bolted it together, but they
Dude,
had
tell
to
me about
send
it,
it to Italy to be polished because Egypt couldn't polish the granite stone in the 1950s. I'm like, really strange that.
Wow, look at those mountains. That's just awesome.
Yeah, I remember this was a breezy day. This was 2016, this footage. We were in here with, this is the group of the people you'll see, the group I was with, small group.
That terracing way up there on that...
It is.
Sorry.
There is terracing on that far hill. There's also these structures, they would call them the granaries, up on the hill behind us. Maybe I can go back real quick.
Yeah, I think I've seen some
I've been
pictures of
looking for a
those.
natural
Yeah, and
sleep aid.
I have pictures
Most
of them
don't
as well.
really
It's
work.
up here behind this tree, and I'll just put it real quick when it gets
Yeah,
here.
you can see some regular...
Yeah.
Dang, man.
So there's staircases and there's these,
Lifting
and
weights
that's like stone
is my
terracing
sleeping
and
pill,
structures,
man.
and they would. The story they tell you is the Inca used them as grain storage because it was cool. It was always cold, like the wind would blow through there, it would stay dry. Whether or not that's
They hauled all their grain up there to store it.
that's a lot of right. You can see the switchbacks, like it's mountain goat people, that's for sure.
So is there any evidence or research on, say, previous water levels there, like during other time periods when the ocean levels were different? Like, are there watermarks anywhere
Some
on those
sexy you're looking.
mountains?
Not that I know of in the Sacred Valley, because you do have a river at the bottom, and I'm sure there's maybe some. I'm sure that's been up and down, but not like. I don't know about like cataclysmic levels of water through the Sacred Valley. For sure, there is. In fact, it's as part of the work that I'm slowly trying to get through with Poznansky's book about Tiwanaku that has
Thank you so much for being
a
here,
lot
man.
about Lake Titicaca. There's
You're here
a
from
lot,
like stream number,
I think
like
that's the
workout
interesting
stream number
study.
1, I think.
Because a lot of the water I think flows from
Also,
there.
you know.
And I think that's
Thanks for the
that
subs,
might
man.
tell us more. I need to learn more about it basically. About
I
the
turned the
historical
volume of the
levels
video
that
pretty
lake,
loud. I don't
'cause
know if you
think
can
it has
hear
a
me
lot to
pretty
do
well
with
or not.
Tiwanaku. But here, I mean, in this this is a true valley. Like this would have been.
Oh man.
I don't think at any time is this like a river that it's a raging river today. And I can only imagine if it was like 100 times the size that it is now. But yeah, I don't know about historical levels in the actual Sacred Valley.
What about ice in the mountains?
There's definitely still ice.
I haven't read the AR6, is it?
Yeah, isn't there permanent ice on some of the
the assessment
mountaintops?
report 6.
Well, yeah, you have stuff that goes up to 20,000 feet more or less.
Right.
You're pretty
think
caught up,
that,
man. The
I
IPCC,
can't
the
remember where I
Intergovernmental
read this,
Panel
but I
on
was
Climate
reading
Change,
about
yeah.
That
AR6.
there may
I
have
haven't
been
read
more
it.
of that during the last ice age.
Well,
That there may have been a lot more ice.
We're already starting to
those
see
mountains.
like
Well, I imagine there
desertification
was,
of
because anything
eastern
like-
South America
There must have been.
and the mouth of the Amazon.
It's the same as Kilimanjaro. It's just equatorial.
Yeah, it's a long document.
I mean,
We're
Kilimanjaro
already seeing
particularly is like
desertification in the
equatorial,
eastern
and it's
Amazon.
had its glacier,
especially
everyone makes
with,
a
like,
big song and
continued
dance about. There's no
soybean
ice on Kilimanjaro. It's
planting
melting. It's been melting for
cutting down
12,000 years, funnily enough, since the end of the last ice age. Like,
Desertification, I think, is the first immediate big risk
that's
other than
happening,
raising
but it's
seawaters.
Same thing, I think, in the ice packs in the
fires,
Andes, but
right?
some of
Like
the pictures
fires
I've
and
got, I don't know if we get into
desertification.
them here, but as you drive between the Sacred Valley
That's
and
probably the number
Bolivia,
one.
you go up
Number
over
2, of course,
40,000
would be the
feet through
runaway
pass. You see
climate
the
due
big-
to like the increased
the
carbon
big
dioxide, right?
Andes
We're at like
mountain
420
range, and
parts
there's
per
a lot
million
of
right
it's
now or
just
whatever.
snow-capped and always ice. This
Okay.
is yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say this This is that area I talked about. That Malco Arabaldo, one of the guys we had on this trip, sort of has identified.
Try 2 again. I don't know if I can do 2
as
right
a
now.
calendaring system, or the shadow that this cast, these nubs cast on this wall. But again, this is obviously not quarried. Like, this was carved, and these shapes have been made almost like bas relief or high relief for some reason.
Yeah, see, and this has always bothered me with these nubs. You know, people wonder, are they lifting things, or are they eroded? You know, I mean, like, well, okay, why did they make them on the freaking mountainside?
Yeah.
You know, like, those aren't for lifting.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's not for lifting. This is true. Those ones aren't for lifting. I mean, it's clothesline.
And they're also not geopolymer injection ports, unless they're made the entire mountain, right?
They're not that either. Yeah.
Scientists are reporting on their models, right,
in
and the data. It's not like they're fantastical skies falling people. You know what I mean?
A lot of effort to go to make like
they're like objective about the data in their model.
You have to cut
rotors.
I don't know, like a ton of material off of that face to leave that one nub.
Yeah, it's probably a synopsis of...
Right? Because that nub sticks out, 6 inches? So you've got to cut all that material off that face to the height of a person to leave that nub there.
It's a little bigger than that, actually. It's it's hard to see the scale until we see pictures
yeah, man.
Later on with people standing at it. Yeah, there you go. So it's
okay. Yeah,
more like a foot?
Yeah,
close to a foot.
So what are the... I mean, so they talk about it being a calendar. Is there... I mean, is there a model that someone's
for sure. The carbon 13, carbon
calendar?
14 ratios in the atmosphere.
Malco Arabaldo is the guy.
We know that it's us because there's an increase of carbon.
He's actually in that BAM documentary. He's
12 and 13 in the atmosphere relative to carbon 14.
Proud sort of traditionalist, and he's done some interesting work with alignments and. I haven't.
There's higher carbon.
I think it's in Spanish.
Yeah, there's lower because.
So I'm not sure, but he was
because
talking
carbon
about
14
it
has half-life of like
I haven't
50,000
done
years.
any more research to see what he's done, but he's.
And if we're burning it off, we know that the carbon in the atmosphere has zero carbon 14 because it's not new. It's like millions
his time on this trip. It was funny.
So we know
this trip was only about 10 people. It was done as like a special favour to Elizabeth.
Can't stop them. That's not even including the end of
crime. Who's the right-hand woman to the current keeper of the Mayan calendar? She's a Guatemalan. She's in 85.
Oh, for
some backstory to it, and she'd arranged for Malco to come with it, and he's like, "Oh, I'm used to taking
groups
of 60 people." And as
the
soon
world
as he heard
changes,
that
man.
I'd been
It's a
to Peru
changing
before,
world, right? We just gotta accept.
He didn't like that. He didn't like. He didn't like that I even knew who Brian Forrester was.
We might lose like Venice. We might lose.
And he just was. He was.
Islands.
You must think the aliens did it, kind of thing. He's very proud. He's like. Very much against any idea
the world
that
will be
the
fine.
Inca
Yeah,
didn't do everything.
We're going to lose like places like Bangladesh.
He had a reason for why everything is the way it is.
Crazy, man.
And why the styles are so different. He would just call that the organic
I don't
style.
know, like I don't know. I think we'll be okay, but like desertification is going to be a big issue, especially for South America.
I just didn't argue with him, but
like
the
other
whole
countries are going to definitely
suffer.
suffer.
And he's like, look, I mean, would make comments like "Don't give credit cards to women" kind of thing. It's like, dude, what are you?
Oh wow.
Yeah. And our group was almost all women, which so that impressed them.
Right.
Anyway, not to talk too much about that.
Fires are going to
give credit cards to me for sure, though. For sure.
Right.
Yeah. Give me the credit.
Yeah. I'll hand them all to Kyle. So he can wreck out all the debt. Man, so the footage has been moving past the mountain here, and it looks like there's cut faces all over it.
Yep.
Right?
Yes, there's staircases everywhere. This is like the stuff at Sacsayhuaman. There is cut faces everywhere on the rock in big flat faces.
Already compromised by the last. Thicker smog, harder weather,
Even these blocks that are then inset into it with these squares and the holes. And then the other thing to note as we pan through here is obviously you see the obvious Inca work, and then you get into this section of where they've piled up a bunch of the megalithic work. So this is like all three styles represented in this one picture. You've got the old sort of Hanan Pacha work into the sides of the mountain. You've got what obviously came after was the megalithic work, and then what came after that is the Inca style, like the rough style.
Oh, gotta go. Yo, thanks, buddy. You're the man, dude.
Day, one of the
thanks for
best
being here,
areas
man.
in Peru
Thanks,
to
buddy.
see it.
I'm gonna have like a wall of subs or a transparent wall of subs. Thanks, buddy.
In the wall,
thanks for inspiring me too, man.
That seems to be a clear connection between the
Hanan Pacha
and the Uran Pacha.
Yeah.
Yep.
They both use the nubs, yeah.
They both got nubs.
Well, and the Inca, and in Machu Picchu, the same thing. The Inca would make stuff to look like it had nubs. They would find a nub-shaped block, would make these nub-shaped blocks, and would insert them into these rough stone walls.
And then they use logs to kind of simulate the nubs sticking out of the walls, too.
Right.
But it's interesting to think about it as some kind of calendar or something to signify something going on with the sun, shadow, and that it might have been intentionally incorporated into the wall in such a pattern to mean something. That would be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, but in that one spot, now you can clearly see, actually, if we back that up, that's one thing I just noticed was like a water, where water had obviously run.
Yeah, there's a channel.
Yeah, exactly. And let me just zoom this in a little bit so I can manipulate it.
That wall is amazing. It's only 2 blocks high, or maybe it's actually 3. I guess there's
this here.
Oh yeah. Okay, I see that. Yeah.
The channel kind of comes through the rock here, and then runs down here, and where there's obviously
thank you for gathers. I appreciate it.
Point.
God, I would love to have seen that fully functioning.
Yeah. Look at those cubes.
Cubes of granite, and that's the thing. This site's granite, and like this nice straight line here too. I mean, stuff has been. These walls have been shaped. I mean, and again, it just looks ancient. The patinaing plus just the weathering. It's the same. I don't know if the mountainside stone's the same as this granite stone. So the granite stone that isn't dismounted. Granite, the quarry for this stuff, and particularly when we get to the top of Lante Tambo, the really big stuff, that all came from the other mountain range. like it's something like 4 or 5 kilometers away, but it's all up and then across the river, then up again. And we'll see. Now this little inset here is one of my favorite parts of Lante Tambo. Shows you it's not a quarry, and see if you guys can guess why when we get there. It's this stuff that's cut out of the wall top left, and I'll definitely aim the camera at it.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see it.
There's the block there.
Is that a slab of rock right there?
Yeah, big flat slab of rock that came from somewhere. This thing here though, this really works my noodle, because
there's a space in the middle there that's sticking out.
Yeah, right.
How did they do that?
How did they do that? Like, that's not a quarry. If that's quarrying, how do you make the back cut? You can't cut that piece of rock out. That's a shape that's been carved into the rock for some reason.
Yeah.
Not a quarried piece of stone.
Quarrying would be stair-stepped.
Well, you have to be able to cut the back.
You got to be able to cut the back.
You got to cut the back.
From top and cut down. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no access to the back cut here, right? This isn't a block of stone, and
the chamois worm can turn 90 degrees.
There you go. The chamois has a little. That's a really useful feature.
It has well, you got to buy the back cutter attachment.
Yes. I don't tell you that at the first contract, but it's like, we really need this piece. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
That second inset down there would need.
Now, are those like up at the top there? There are a bunch of nubs sticking out of that.
Nubs and more flat. Yeah,
it's
way up high.
We're seeing the zoom. It's a little blurry. It's hard. We're not seeing it in full HD.
It will look better in the video. Yes, but up here, there is.
Yeah.
Yep. And in fact, this stuff.
Looks like there's a whole bunch at the top. Above, you can't. They're out of the frame at this point.
Back up a little bit. Oh yeah. I see them.
Yeah.
Those are. This one's a nub. These look like bushes to me. Just these regular bushes.
Oh, okay.
Might be a growth. Okay. Yeah. But this stuff goes up the hill, and in fact, there's a. I'm sure I've got the picture somewhere, but there's a shape of the mountain where the Inca will tell you, well, this is a condor head. It's a falcon. It's a bird head, and this is the same thing. I do have a video in my Sacsay Huaman video where I talk about all the shapes, because people see these shapes in the stones, and certainly the Inca did. But it's, I kind of, my opinion is, it's something like seeing shapes in clouds. Like we're pattern recognition animals. We'll see the shapes we're looking to see, and I'm not sure that any of that was an original intention to look like these animals. I just think it's been found to look that way and then put into the culture through subsequent cultures like the Inca. Because it's very, very subjective. It's very, and there's all sorts of, there's sometimes I'll look at it from, well, you can see if you look at it from 2,000 feet altitude, the whole city of Cusco, and there's just the Puma head up here, Sacsay Huaman, and the Cusco's the body, and then it's all very dependent on perspective and how you look at it.
Right.
It's hard for me.
That's a hard question. You just don't know. I mean, maybe they intended that, but. Yeah. You can't say whether they did or not, but certainly if somebody sat down and planned a city out, they would be planning out the outline, and maybe the guy who did it was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna draw a cat, right?
Yeah,
but maybe not. It's just hard to tell.
Yeah, and some of them, and depending on the interpretation, like a lot of them are very stylized, and other ones are less stylized.
Right.
So it's
kind of like the pause in the wall at Sacsayhuaman. It's
right,
like,
exactly.
Once you see one, you start looking for them everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And these 6 blocks in a row.
We're going to build this city on a mountain.
I nearly spat it everywhere.
But those flat faces and stuff, the other thing they bring to mind is like some kind of a facet or attaching some structure to. You would want to flatten it, and I don't know.
Yeah, it does look like stuff was plugged into the mountain there.
And so Napahuaca is the other place like that. It looks like a big old power socket, and it's weird. Like Napahuaca, Napa Iglesia, that has that thing. It's like this is the only bluestone outcropping. So this block, we're going to look at some pictures of it later. Very interesting shapes in that one. It's like a huge block in the ground that has these big channels cut out of it, and I've got photos of it later. We'll get back to it. But this obviously we're up several levels in the terracing here.
This terracing. I just have to say that is an incredible amount of work. If you're just doing this by hand, hand tools. I mean, oh my God, I can't even imagine. And think about cutting away all of that dirt first, and doing something with it, whatever building, and then building the walls. Obviously, backfilling.
I love lifting weights.
Engineering the walls to be good retaining walls that are obviously still standing. They look very straight.
Mm-hmm.
That's just they're holding back hundreds of tons of material from falling down the mountain, and they have been for centuries.
It's an incredible engineering. Retaining walls are notorious for bulging and cracking and eventually collapsing. But just
Shiva
the materials that had to be cut and moved and filled in order to farm in it. You had to have topsoil as opposed to just the rocky rubble and
Yeah, they probably pulled the soil. They probably moved the soil up there. The Inca.
Yeah.
You kind of have megalithic terracing at the top. These last couple layers are megalithic, and then you have the Inca work. But yeah, it's and maybe they even had to ship the dirt up here. I wouldn't be surprised. Like that's just
wouldn't either.
They had some manpower.
Nobody
they
wants
did
to
some
watch me work out
on the hillsides.
And why? Why would you? Did the valley not provide enough farmland?
I think so. Yeah, no, that's why there wasn't that much farm. Like at the base, and it's steep everywhere. There's very little flat land in the Sacred Valley. And the other thing that the Inca were master farmers, really. So they had agricultural zones at different elevations. So down in the jungle zones, they grow different fruit to the intermediate zones and the high altitude zones.
Absolutely.
They would plant different crops, and they'd plan that. They would create their system and all of their agriculture around it.
It's hard to imagine that in 150 years, like that an entire culture would just move into a place and take on that monumental work. Why did you just, if you're already on the move, why did you decide to go there if that's where if you're going to be farming? We'll just cut the sides of the mountain away and.
I think it's possibly because they found Cusco. They probably found this abandoned megalithic city, and they were like the high Incas and the bosses of everyone were like, this is where we're parking here, so make it work, and so this is where we get this is where we get to the top and the really big stuff. These are all big massive granite blocks, and again, according to a lot of people, this is the organic style. So this was done on purpose.
Right.
This wasn't repaired later.
It's like the nubs scale up with the size of the block.
Yeah. Yeah, these are big shapes and big stones. And these all came from the top of the next mountain. There's a quarry up there for a lot of that stuff.
Well, we're already at the first break. So let's take a break and come back and look at the good grief, these blocks. I don't want to take a break, but we got to take a break.
We'll get to the big stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And we are back. Uncharted X, Brothers of the Serpent podcast, looking at Ollantaytambo and getting to the real megalithic stuff at the top here. But I wanted to ask you, Ben, if there's anything about the estimates of stone moved in all of the Inca civilization, because the idea is that the conventional idea is that they did all of this work, right? And if they existed for 150 years, has anyone really gone through and done a tried to estimate the complete amount of stones that they moved. Because, for example, in Egypt, they look at a structure like the Great Pyramid and say, well, it took 20 years, and then you can come up with how many stones they had to lay per minute, or however per hour, to get that structure. And this just seems like, for a group of people that were here for 150 years, everything that exists here in terms of megalithic stonework, even down to the small stuff and the earthworks, it's almost unimaginable how they could have pulled all this off in such a short amount of time.
It's a good question. I don't know if anybody's studied it, but I agree with the with the premise for sure. Like that, it's a tremendous amount of work. Even and then particularly when you include the work the Inca themselves did, just the terracing, but they shifted. I mean, I don't know what the estimates of the population were. It was a few million people, I think. It may have been as high as that many for the actual Inca civilization. I don't know, but I'd be interested to see it. Like you say, they've done the calculations on things like the Great Pyramid, which I think is like one block every 5 minutes for 25 years.
A few million people. That's a lot.
That is a lot. It may not be that many. I don't know. I'm purely trying to. I know I've read something in the past, but I can't. I can't.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about if they. It's hard for me to understand how. Well, I guess maybe if they were moving, all of their people, and then 150 years later, there's a million of them. That's a lot of people. But I guess you could imagine a couple of 100,000 people on the move.
Yeah.
Through that valley, but I don't know.
Well, I think they grew to that over time. I think there was I don't know how many started. In fact, it's a good question. I could go and look. We could probably Google it relatively quickly.
We need economists to take a look at this kind of stuff and try to figure out, like, well, what type of organization would it require?
Yeah, you need logistics guys.
Yeah,
and economists.
logistics. Yeah.
Well, it's a good point, because that's one of the issues you have with places like, Tiwanaku in particular, because of the altitude and the food situation. You have to how many people, how much food do you need, how much agricultural land do you need, and the challenge in some of these places is the altitude. 13,000 feet, 12,500 feet. Well, way up. In a lot of cases, definitely above the tree line. Tiwanaku. This is generally a little bit lower, but not much. Like this is all 10 to 12,000 feet. A lot of the Sacred Valley, huge, like massive in altitude. Difficult to grow food for a lot of people, hard to sustain large populations.
So I wonder what the CO2 level is there, because that's really what it is with the plants.
Right.
The higher you get, the more sparse the CO2, the less they can grow.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and so back in ancient times, it could have been totally different.
Yeah.
But the other interesting thing is, during the break we were talking about when the Inca were there. We were saying, or what were you saying? The 12th century, 16th, something like that.
It was, I think, 13 to 15, mid 15s or something like that. 13th to 16th century, or like a window in there. I believe something like that. I would have to look it up.
Yeah, that's in the Gothic cathedral period.
Yeah, right.
And maybe the high Gothic cathedral period. Which is also interesting, right? Suddenly pops up a civilization that's just doing incredible work with stone, and I'm not attributing the megaliths to them, but they still, nevertheless, did amazing stuff, and it's just out of nowhere, seemingly.
Right.
It's interesting.
It pops up out of nowhere. Yeah.
And we were in Colorado a while back looking at the cliff dwellings,
Chaco and Pueblo people.
Yeah, in at Mesa Verde.
Yep.
And it's the same deal. It's like they're living way up on the edges of these canyons and inside these giant overhangs, and they've built all this amazing stuff out of stone, and cities under these overhangs, villages at least, and right at the same time.
Yep.
And then they vanish. Right? Yeah. They're there for a couple hundred years and they're gone after that. It's interesting. So strange. And how did they live way up there, and why did they choose that spot? It's just...
Was it a warm period or something? It's... Well, because that's, we grow portion, like typically the Renaissance corresponds to a warming period, and the Dark Ages was a cooler period. I think weather and climate, whether or not your crops are going to grow a lot, and you can actually sort of go on those growth spurts that obviously must be required for this type of thing. Because I'm sure that's what happened too with the Inca. Like that period, I don't think they started with that many people, but they certainly grew very quickly. Yeah, probably because it was. I mean, they probably had plenty of food, you develop that civilization. You've got extra time, you can specialize, you can develop all the things that are required to end up with something like this.
Yeah, which is why it's in some case, and I do want to get back to what we're looking at on the video here, but there are some questions about that, like the chicken or the egg problem. We see all the terracing, but to build all the terracing, you need a lot of people.
A lot of people to start.
But to feed a lot of people, you need a lot of terraces to feed them. So it's like, there's a problem. Yeah. I mean, I guess you can imagine them doing it in stages, but still, it's like, there's a lot of work there, requiring a lot of people doing a lot of work, and to feed those people, you need a lot of space to do the feeding. But if they're trying to build the place to make the food, to feed the people, to do the work, you get into this circle. And there's
exactly.
So I wonder if some of the terraces were there. I don't know.
Definitely they were. I think there is a lot of these sites have. Like even here, Atlanta Tambo, there are a number of terraces that are megalithic. Same thing at Machu Picchu. There's parts of them are megalithic for sure, and then I think that a lot of them have been added, and they've been repaired. I mean, this site's been repaired. It's a lot of people point to the blocks underneath these things. It's like there is accounts of the Inca standing up some of these blocks and trying to move them. Like they were fixing stuff up where they could. Like they would repair what they could. But in terms of the terracing, for sure, I think there's lots of those terraces were megalithic. There's a mix, but a lot of the Inca did far more though. And whether there's at a point here, there's some of it may have broken down as well. Like they might have repaired, and there might have been some shapes there that they were able to then work with to create the terracing. Because I mean, there's some sites that aren't as well maintained as this. Like this stuff, that's the other thing. This stuff's everywhere. Like you can walk around them. If you can hike up and down these mountains, then you'll find this stuff in the Sacred Valley. There's so much of it is outside of original official sites these days. It was everywhere. And before we started, I was showing you some images of a place that's up in the hills somewhere. It's not a tourist site. There's a town nearby, but it's got megalithic terracing. It's got the big sundial or moondial looking thing, and you have terraces that are definitely megalithic. And then there's blocks laying around. So I think they probably had similar to Egypt. Like they could use some of that infrastructure. At least I think there must have been enough to sustain and let them grow at some pace. That then they had to keep doing more and more to keep growing. But yeah, you're right. I mean,
yeah. And it seems like if the Inca did all of this on their own, this was their own sort of just way of doing things, then wherever they came from should have a bunch of this stuff too.
Right.
Yeah. If they migrated here, then where they came from should show all of this same type of work.
Well, so that's where you get to the Altiplano. So if you go with the idea that they came from the Lake Titicaca and the sort of Tiwanaku, Pumapunku area, that's the high plain. So that is flat land. Like you don't need to do terracing up there, but you're faced with the altitude issues. But there's huge amounts of flat land on the Altiplano, and then it seems like for whatever reason, that culture shifted down into the Sacred Valley, and then once you're in the valley, that's where you have to do the terracing.
Yeah. Okay. And I think doesn't Graham is it in Magicians of the Gods where he talks about that there's evidence of someone up there in the Altiplano doing very interesting work with crop plants, because you can't grow normal stuff up there. You can't grow grains and grow fruit, but there's evidence that people were growing like a certain kind of tuber plant that then had to be processed in a certain way to make it not poisonous or whatever. So somebody knew what they were doing, at least.
I actually think there's also evidence for advanced agricultural techniques where they were shaping the earth into these mounds.
Yo, Barra, what's up, man?
Irrigating and
RN to be Barra, buddy. What's up, man?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly where that source. It
Doctor of environmental science,
I'm
not medicine.
They look like corrugated fields.
Corrugated fields, right? And they were definitely.
How you doing, man?
Pretty advanced sort of massive agricultural techniques to do
I
it.
upped my weight again, buddy.
Yeah.
And now
So
I'm
on the
doing.
video, we're looking at this, the
well, not from
long
last
block
stream.
there
Same
that's
from
up
last
on
stream,
top of
but
all the little ones. That's
Yeah.
very.
I'm gonna do 2 sets.
Like,
so you
yeah.
get
Actually,
three,
huge block.
I mean,
Yeah,
2 reps.
So we got a couch.
2 reps
We got
in
the
this one
couch.
set for you, buddy.
And
How you
then
doing,
this
man?
is the and then this is the famous kind of iconic area of Machu Picchu, with not Machu Picchu, Ollanta Tambo, with these blocks
Here we go.
that are to the left of it as we pan left. And there's,
Yeah,
there's
look how that couch has nubs on top of it.
there are these nubs on it, and whether or not, see, that block may have been oriented differently originally.
Yeah.
It's been put there, it's been moved there, it's had this foundation built. These blocks have either been repaired or pushed up, or they've definitely had some reinforcing done. And they've been shifted, like they've reconstructed as much of this wall. But this actually goes around the corner as well. And as we pan left here, you'll see the quarry for these blocks at the top of the next mountain over. So this is where these stones have come from. And again,
For you, Bara.
With this wall too.
Uh-huh.
With this,
yeah.
just style of it. This giant block followed by the very narrow
the
slim
shims.
pieces.
blocks that are
Yeah.
perfectly fitted, and then another giant one.
Well, and there's also some shapes here. There's
How's it
some
going, buddy?
carvings
Yes.
that have been. You see these? They'll tell you that this is the Chicana, like the Incan cross, the Andean cross. I'm sorry.
Let's see.
But well, okay, so yeah, you can see it on. Maybe I can.
I mean, I can see the stair step pattern, but I've never seen
Yeah.
the cross.
Shoot. Let me go back.
Whoop. Back
we
way up.
went too far. Yeah. I'll back it up again.
Damn it, Ben,
So-
you went too far.
Well, damn it, went too far.
We
this time.
got to do that.
Yeah, so you can see the stair tap pad. So there's if you imagine a cross, but this actually, the funny thing is this has too many steps in it for the Andean. The Andean cross has less steps in it, and that is a shape that's carved in a few places. But it's just, again, this loose interpretation of what may or may not have been something. I mean, later on we'll see a little clip with Rogerio talking, and he gives you the Inca version of this, where he'll talk about this shape in the stone, and then also there's a puma that was carved in here, and how he's sort of interpreting the shapes to mean a puma. I don't think that's what's going on here, but it's definitely how the Inca have interpreted it and used it.
The other thing I would point out is the narrow rocks that join the giant megaliths also have tiny nubs.
They've got nubs.
The little nubs. Yeah, definitely nubs.
So
Maybe
it's-
those are the injection ports, huh?
Yeah.
It just seems like it's definitely a style thing, as opposed to, I mean, if we're throwing out the injection port because there's like crystal inclusions obvious in some of the stones, and
We'll get to that.
they're
yeah.
coming out of the solid mountain.
Right.
It just looks like a
Do you
style.
think it's stylistic?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it must be. I don't know. So top of this hill over here, you'll see the quarry. The quarry is this area up here. So they shipped all this stuff down here. There's a raging river that they have to cross and then bring it up to the top of this mountain.
And it's granite?
Granite. Some of these are like 70 tons. And so you saw some of the bigger pieces down lower. We'll go back down there as well.
There is strange, like, flaking on the sides, too, that is is interesting to me.
Like
I mean,
a
I have
vitrification.
seen that happen with limestone. It'll big flakes can fall off the outside, but I don't know if granite. But I guess it could. It could do that.
We see that we saw that in the second pyramid as well, with the footage of the granite around there, where something's happened. That surface layer has come peeling off, kind of like that as well there. Similar, and whether it's it's a consequence of the vitrification of the stone, or if it's some evidence of cataclysmic damage, I don't really know. I don't know the explanation for why, and it doesn't happen everywhere either. Like it's in certain places.
And
in
it's
fact,
kind of like, it makes me think that the tool that, and I'm going to tech here, but it seems like the tool itself left, like however it cut, it leaves this thin
layer.
surface, and then the layer can peel off because it's actually been changed from the nature of the actual interior of the stone. There's another part of it where it's
So these
flaked
are
off there.
vitrified?
Right here. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, they're shiny. They're like not everywhere, but there's some there's vitrification here. Then there's flaking. Russ, that's a good point. It may be a result of the tool. And wait till we see, like, there's something's happened at Karnak. So I think the next episode we're going to go probably back to Egypt and have another guest with us from that trip, and then. And we'll get into Karnak, which is not a site I've been able to do videos about because I wasn't able to film until recently. But there's some incredible evidence of sort of the nature of the stone changing there. Like there's some really strange things that have happened at that place. That there's still some of this stuff left that we can. Very interesting. Something's affected the stone much, and to a deeper degree than even what you see here with these chunks flaking off it.
Okay.
And there's a beautiful section of wall, by the way. And so megalithic terracing, right? That's a good example of like.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, so I've seen pictures of this block, and it has this like I don't know what to call it, a long nub, right?
Yeah,
something
that bar on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? You know, I don't know.
Beautiful.
And there's foundation below. Some nice sharp inside angles. Yeah. They certainly did some of that stuff when they could.
And does this? So you've walked all over this site yourself. Mm-hmm. Does it look haphazard to you? Like, does it look to you like this site was that like it fell apart, or that it never was finished, or is it a bit of both?
It seems to me like it's definitely been damaged. Like that something happened. I don't know whether it was ever finished, but I think if it was damaged. I don't get the same vibe of not finished. I get damaged from this, and that's what I get from a lot of South American stuff is damaged. And that's why you see these blocks laying around out here. And even just some of them, like the erosion on some of them is And so you've got these blocks laying here. Like this is clearly like a block that came from this structure.
Yeah, fell down the hill.
It's come down the hill somehow. And then, so you...
But there are blocks, aren't there? Aren't there blocks that were clearly...
There you go. And we'll get to that. Yeah, so there is a block from this building there's blocks, I think, in the river as well, like that were... either left there or there's at least one on the side of the road that leaves away from Lantatema, which actually you're right, that's a good indication that it wasn't finished.
Yeah,
but
or that the original builders were trying to fix it after something happened and then they couldn't finish that or something like that.
Yeah, definitely something happened either way. I mean, even if it wasn't finished, it still then suffered damage. Right. So it's possible that it's both.
Yeah. God, look at that! Look at that protrusion right there.
Yeah, that's an unfinished. It would tell you they didn't finish carving it off or something. But it's like that seems pretty regular.
They didn't finish nubbing it out.
Didn't finish nubbing it out all the way. And there's more here. Like it just that's the randomness of this, right? Isn't it crazy? It's just I don't.
So
I can't explain it.
You think maybe the Inca stood these up and then put their masonry in between each one of the large megaliths there?
Yeah. I think in a lot of cases, either these were remaining here, or they've been stood up and it's been reconstructed by the Inca. Yeah, that's exactly
kind of what it seems like.
Yeah, I also think that those. Another possibility is that those blocks are staged, but not in place by the original builders, and the Inca came along, found them staged, and then just built their wall without moving them, because they're kind of each one is set apart from the other one.
Right.
So you can imagine they're kind of in a line and they're all staged to get put on this wall or something.
Yeah, and maybe the Inca then assembled them.
Yeah.
I mean, because they would I'm convinced that they were putting stuff back together where they could.
Right.
And they'd fix it. Otherwise, they'd use it if it was just laying around. It's one of my favorite walls. You were talking about the crystal incursions in the stone. You see that here, and we'll see some more in some pictures too.
That is just amazing. Now, this wall has a lot of very prominent nubs for some reason.
Yep. This is Nubtown.
Nubtown.
And lichen.
Very large lichen, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would like to think that these nubs actually are saying something somehow, right?
That they're
almost like a
Braille. Can you read it?
It's giant Braille.
That's the theory that the guys on Twitter, the Nub investigation team, that often discuss this on Twitter. That's more or less where they're thinking along those lines. They're investigating it from that perspective anyway, to say that it's possible that it was some form of language, that it does express something.
Yeah, like a sign that doesn't.
Right.
It's aesthetically pleasing. It's like, well, this is 12th Street, so they just have some configuration up there depending on whatever their writing style was. It's sort of shorthand for that'd be kind of cool. This is the northern side of town. This is the western gate.
Yeah.
This is whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Man, God, those.
Yeah.
But then that picture you were just showing with all those giant terraces with nubs all over them. I don't know. How are you going to read that?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. So I need to, and shortly, I think maybe before I even get this out, I'll get my chat with Hugh Newman out, and he talks about them being sort of a tuning aspect for resonance in a lot of these structures, like the overall resonance of them, connecting to the earth. And he had a very interesting explanation for the nubs, which I hadn't heard, and I was like, you know what, that actually, it kind of made sense to me.
That actually does, because you can change. After the stone is in place, you can change its total mass.
Right.
Slightly to very precisely tune it. That's a really good point.
And he also then, same thing for the scoop mark. So it was sometimes the nub wasn't enough for removing nubs and those protrusions. It was like, now we got to scoop into the thing.
I like it. I definitely like that idea.
Yeah, it's just some more of these. So we're flipping through some images from the site, and I kind of want to get to, this is just, I mean, it's wonderful work.
Yeah. So this is the little water feature.
The water feature.
Earlier.
Yeah, and I have
were we looking at on the show, or was that pre-show?
We were looking on the video.
We did. Yeah, I kind of want to get to this another area that's had water running through it, which was a feature on the site. Yeah, I kind of want to get. We'll get back up to the top. We may end up not getting to the Temple of the Moon today.
It's all right.
But have no fear, we shall get there.
All right. I was starting to get scared.
You get me started talking.
Is there
more of these?
Is there real quick? Is there, like, as we're looking again at these flat surfaces carved in the mountains? Like, do you know if there's surfaces carved in really inaccessible places way up on those peaks? Is that possible? Because they already look sort of inaccessible in some cases, but like on that mountain, is there some of that way up there?
I mean, so I would say even in places like Huayna Picchu and Machu Picchu, very steep mountainsides. There's definitely work surfaces in some areas. There was not like, I don't know of any like sheer vertical faces though, and even that I wouldn't put it past the people that lived here to be able to climb it fearlessly and do. They seem to obviously been able to do that in any case, but. Yeah, I don't know. I know what you're saying, like the sheer verticality of some of it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that myself that I can recall, but there's definitely like, it's not for the, like trying to climb Huayna Picchu. It's very exposed and very steep, and just they would carve stairs into stuff and almost felt like a sheer vertical face, but and then we humans, we can do crazy stuff. You've seen, what's that documentary? Alex, he climbs up El Cap. Free climbing, like free solo. You guys see free solo?
That's crazy. Yeah, humans do crazy stuff.
I know.
If you want an extremely tension-filled couple of hours, go and find free solo and watch that. That's Alex Honnold, I think. It's a free solo. He free climbed El Cap, no ropes, scampered up it in like a record time too. Just a couple of hours. Well, several hours, but all right. Let me put some purpose to that. I knew I'd have too many photos to try and just browse.
All right.
We'll try and catch up to where we were. How about that? We'll look at this megalithic stuff.
Yeah.
Because there was some, and there was one specific thing I did want to look at. Now that I remember, as we were looking down. Where are the pictures down onto that block that was in the ground? And then we can flip back to the video. I will find it, I swear.
Yeah, no problem. I also noticed that, while you're looking, I'm just going to point out that very iconic shape that they make all the doors and windows.
Yeah.
There's something about that.
And they're not all doors and they're not all windows.
Right. Sometimes they're just like insets
in the walls. Yeah, I find that really interesting.
But they're always this same sort of tapered,
like a trapezoidal shape. Yeah, and we'll see a lot of that at the next thing we'll go to in the next segments, the Coruscant.
I'd like to know what the ratio is between the top and the bottom. The measurements. Yeah, what is that thing?
So he's looking down now at this giant. This block. Is part of the mountain, basically, right?
Either that or it's a big block that's embedded in the ground. Yeah, so it's
at the bottom of the terraces.
Yeah, wow, very strange shapes carved into it, or like it's like I've seen some very interesting there's the
machined into it almost.
Yeah, the whole. Who has a good man? I wish I could. I've got the DVD over there somewhere. There's the Legend of the Three Worlds. I think it's Cosmogony of the Three Worlds. It's Jesus Gamara might be his his work, but they, you get the same effect by like pressing shapes into plasticine, like blocks, and that's almost what this looks like. It almost seems to be exactly how that was done, but it's just this remarkable piece, which I can't explain it, and I think it is, just a chunk of the mountain down there.
So I want to mention this this guy at applingJewelry.com. We talked about him off air in one of the earlier shows.
Oh yeah, but he showed the picture with the vibrating drill and then getting stuck in the hole.
So he has this, he uses this little tool, and it's a ultrasonic drill or carving tool for these really hard stones, and it just basically you put in each shape metal tool at the end of this thing. It doesn't spin it; it just sends the vibration in, and he just drives it like a round tube or a star-shaped tube or a square tube. It'll just drive it right into really hard stone. And he can take out that core, or he even made some scoop marks on the side of a really hard stone that look just like the scoop marks on the side of the unfinished obelisk. Check out Appling Jewelry.
Cool.
.com.
Yeah, he's got a whole article on it, right?
Yeah, he wrote an article in there. He's got a little blog on the site, and you can just see, like, one of the articles is about technology of the ancients or something like that.
Yeah.
And he shows all these examples of him mimicking cuts. And of course his tool is really small. It's for making jewelry, but could you
size it up?
Yeah, could you size it up and cut something like this giant megalith we're looking at here, or if this is part of the mountain?
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
I remember the video. Yeah, there must be. There has to be some tool involved. Like I think there has to be some. I don't think it's carved the way we would picture primitive people doing it. This whole like chiseling away with this and hammering at it. It seems to be, and same thing in Egypt. There must be. We have the evidence for the tool in the work itself, so that tool must be. It must have existed, and so something like that. That's definitely along the lines of. I think the areas we should be thinking about and exploring.
And then the next question, so if you accept, okay, they had some method, some tool, or some methods, or both, that could do this, well, what is that for?
Like with the jewelry maker, you drive the tool through it because, not necessarily because you're wanting to leave behind the work, but that you're taking a piece that's going to be the work.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So these could have been, hey, let's make some snake plaques for this lintel.
So that's the conventional explanation. These are pieces that were quarried out, but it's like how? Like you can't quarry these. And we looked at that piece earlier that isn't quarried out too, and then.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. And you also have like little areas like this where this has clearly also been worked. These are chunks that have been taken out of the stone. They look even more weathered.
And this, by the way,
what for is like
stone. I mean, this dark charcoal gray color. It's just it would make. I mean, I imagine that polished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You make beautiful marble pillars or whatever. Pillars out of that.
I agree.
You make a giant pillow wall out of that thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there is little insets and cuts into it. Strange.
Yeah, and this stuff's everywhere. I really need to. The problem with filming and taking and building photos is then you have to kind of try and classify it all and work it all out afterwards. But
right.
Yeah, so that's
go through it, man. This is supposed to be.
So that picture we're looking at, there's terracing, like 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of terracing, and in the top level is the megalithic stuff.
Yeah,
the lower terraces are not. So I wonder if that megalithic wall keeps going down.
Right underneath,
possibly. Yeah, and somebody came along and added terrace and material alongside that wall because that wall's already holding the mountain back.
Maybe. I mean, there's actually evidence. I've seen pictures of that where the Inca would build over the top of, in some cases, the megalithic stuff. But that actually covered up. Actually, this is the other one thing I wanted to share briefly. Is just like, so driving down from that hill, kind of this is the same valley we were looking at, and the quarry's up on the left side of this mountain. This is one of the blocks that is left on the road, and as you see, we get a bit closer. They made this road around it because they didn't want to shift the block.
Didn't want to move the block.
But this is one of the granite blocks that belonged on the top of Lante Tambo that's still parked here. And as I believe there's also 1 or 2 in the river itself, like they were dropped in the river. as you're driving past it. So it's just a big shaped quarried stone.
How big do you think it is?
We're sitting in a van, sitting in a van, so it's probably 4 or 5 feet high.
Yeah,
and it's probably buried.
This is a big van we're in.
Yeah,
like 10 people in the van. Yeah, and it's.
I think one more bench press set and then one more bicep curl set.
It's got that weird curve to it.
Pretty good.
We didn't stop. It was a weird day actually. We couldn't stop. There was traffic. Funny enough, nothing in front of us, but there was. They couldn't get people into the main entrance to Lente Tambo, so people were using this road. Otherwise, I wanted to stop and take a look at it. But next time,
writing on the side of it, BLD.
Oh, it's a political, just political advertising that you see all over the place in Peru.
Okay.
For one, and then the archaeological teams will come along try and clean it off. But you see this on a lot of the fences, and I think it's some political group. Slogans and things.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Good.
So I can give you. There's a couple minutes if you want to hear it from Rogerio. I think this is in one of my videos. But so we're standing in front of the wall here. This was in 2013.
Let's we're up on another break, so let's hear it right after we come back from the break.
Okay, we'll do that, and then we'll move on to the crow country.
Sounds good. That pattern is real clear behind him right there.
Yes, so he will talk about that.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Good. All right. We'll be right back.
Yep. All right, we're back for the next segment. Ben from Uncharted X and the Kyle and Russ, Brothers of the Serpent. We're going to wrap up our Lente Tambo visit here and move on. But one thing I wanted to share with you guys before we move on, and this is something that I think is in one of my videos, but this is just a quick clip of Rogerio, this excellent guide that we had in 2013 on the Graham Hancock trip, and he's talking about kind of the Inca symbolism that gets attributed to this wall that's at Lente Tambo. He'll talk about the shapes and how it's used, but he also at the same time acknowledges that there's a good chance that there's sort of, I guess, previous cultures and previous builders. He's very versed in the Inca, I guess, traditions of this place, but he's also open-minded and has lived here and seen a lot of mysterious, strange things that you can't just attribute to the Inca. But yeah, hopefully you guys can hear this, and I'll let this roll.
In front of this church there is really huge stones also, just thrown like everywhere. So probably the Mayor Temple of the Sun was down there. And here we don't know exactly what the Incas or these people or these ancient people want to make here. So the point here is that you can see this symbol again. Yeah? Look at here. 1, 2, 3. Did you see the 3 one? So the same philosophy that the Incas used, the 3 levels of the world. Yeah?
Oh, what a great workout, what a great workout.
Kai Pacha, Hanan Pacha. So the mother
just before the rain.
Level or under the ground. The second level is where we are living now, the present world. The other one is celestial world, which is in the sky. So all these 3 levels was symbolized for 3 animals: snake,
I'm exhausted.
and condor.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching.
Pumas. We are the second level here. So that's why in the next stone you can see kind of profiles of the bodies. Pumas. Just probably the Spanish, they carry the heads first. But you can see clearly the tail part, all the body almost disappearing here.
Alright, let's read it. Let's read Ninja. Let's do it.
Look at the tail, look at the body, but the head was carried. We don't know exactly how to make that. But the point is that this temple, it wasn't finished. Why? Because when you go to the quarry sector, there is more stones waiting for these ancient people.
Thanks for being here.
We don't know exactly why they
You rule Bara, you rule Dick. Thanks for being here. Thanks for subscribing, Dick. 6 months, you rule, man. You're the dude.
If the Incas built that, so when the Spanish came in 15th century, they had to stop this work. But probably it's more ancient. Yeah? More ancient. So the point is that